The weather will be very different for the rest of January, as we are expecting several more shots of cold air that'll keep things very cold in much of the United States. In addition to that, we do expect more snowfall in several areas, and we may see another big winter storm sometime in the next few weeks. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States for the rest of January, and we will begin with what's happening across the country this morning. And to begin with, we have a historic winter storm that is still happening across the Carolinas, Georgia, and as well as Florida. Heavy snow and also freezing rain and sleet does continue up and down the East Coast, but this winter storm has left a massive mark on the Southeast. And in fact, this was a very historic winter storm, which shattered a ton of records. We were talking about this a couple of days ago, how many records would probably be broken. Well, we had dozens of records broken. One of the biggest ones being that 8 inches of snow fell over in Milton, Florida. That is the most snow we've ever seen in a single day in any part of Florida in history. It shattered the previous record. And then also back over New Orleans, we had almost 10 inches of snow observed in a single day. The previous record for the highest amount of snow in a single day was 2.7 inches of snow back in 1963. That is the biggest record that we've seen broken from this winter storm. And there were many other records broken, but those are some of the most notable ones out of this storm. Behind this winter storm, we have a lot of cold air that is ushering in very strong winds as well up and down the East Coast, which will keep things very cold throughout the day today. And this is what it looks like on the radar this morning. Again, notice that we have some snow continuing across the Carolinas and back into Georgia. Some freezing rain and sleet continues around Jacksonville. We will probably see a little bit of snowfall in Jacksonville over the next couple of hours before eventually all of this is offshore. And notice how we are done with this by lunchtime. So if you are looking forward to more snowfall, well, this is it. We only got a couple more hours left, and then we are done with this winter storm. And this is a map that shows all of the snowfall accumulation reports we've had across several different states. And notice all the orange dots. That's at least 8 inches of snow that has fallen, and we've seen that in a ton of areas, including areas like Lafayette, Louisiana, which we had many reports around and just above 10 inches of snowfall in Lafayette, and even back over near Pensacola, Florida. We've had several areas here, upwards of 9 inches of snow now back over near Milton, Florida, and that number is probably going to end up being officially a bit higher by the end of this event. So we're probably going to have some more updates to these numbers, and even back into southeastern parts of Alabama, many areas near 9 inches of snowfall. Across the board, this was a historic winter storm. As these numbers continue to come in, we will be posting them on our Facebook page and on Twitter at MaxVelocityWX, so make sure to follow along there. We'll keep you posted with any more updates that happen in those areas, and as well as the East Coast as those accumulation numbers come in. And by the way, if you've seen any snowfall, feel free to leave how much snow you saw in the comments down below. I am curious to see how much snow you end up seeing out of this event. And you're probably wondering, when is all of this snow going to melt? Well, it will be melting a lot today as temperatures do climb above freezing across the southeast. Most areas will see some significant melting today, but as we go into tomorrow, that is when we're expecting the majority of the melting to happen. We will go from almost 10 inches of snow in Louisiana back down to basically nothing unless it's elevated surfaces or maybe some sort of surface that is in the shadow. Other than that, it is going to be almost all gone by tomorrow afternoon. Areas along the East Coast will have the snow stick around, I think, for an extra day, so by Friday, a lot of it should be melted along the Carolina coastline. And back into northern Florida, I think the majority of this will also be gone sometime tomorrow afternoon. Now, the weather is going to be changing a ton over the next couple of weeks, as we are going to have a very different weather pattern that we have not experienced in really a long time. The last time we saw something like this was back in December. So let's begin with what's happening out there right now on the jet stream. Right now, we do have a digging trough that continues to bring snow across the east coast of the United States. It's not very pronounced on the jet stream, but we do have compensating for that very strong winds aloft, which is actually what is elongating all of that rain and snow across the east coast of the United States. By the way, if this trough was further back to the west and all this moisture was going further to the north, we'd probably be talking about a more significant snow event even back into the northeast, but luckily that is not happening. As we eventually go into Thursday into Friday, notice how the jet stream winds do remain pretty strong. A little trough, a little shortwave trough will be moving across the Midwest. We may get a little bit of snow out of that in the Great Lakes region, but nothing too impressive. Eventually by the weekend, that is where things change a lot. We are talking about, again, a completely different weather pattern where our jet stream is going to be lifted very far off to the north, and this here is important because we are going to be seeing less extreme weather events as we get closer to the end of January, as all of this warm air is going to start to build here along the Gulf Coast and into the southeast, which is again going to lead to a milder weather pattern for much of the country. But notice back over on the west coast, we are going to continue to see some of these little troughs that develop back over on the west coast. We've had a few of these recently, one of which actually brought a big winter storm to Texas and back through the Ohio Valley and even through much of the central and southern plains only about a week ago, where we saw a lot of snow in Arkansas and Texas. But here's the thing, this one is in a different position, and it's also going to be a very slow moving system. So what's going to happen as we go into early next week is I think we're going to see another shot of maybe some snow in the Midwest, perhaps maybe a small disturbance that moves across the southern plains. But for the time being, this does not look like anything extreme by the end of the month. Now, this could change. We definitely have some time between now and the middle of next week before this trough actually goes over the Rocky Mountains. But this is the type of system that would be accustomed to bringing a larger winter storm like we've seen recently. But for now, this does not appear as if it is going to be significant. But if we do end up seeing a big winter storm by the end of the month, it is probably going to be near the end of the month. I mean, we're talking January 29th to 31st if we have any sort of big time winter storm. So let's talk more about the future radar and break this down into more simplistic terms with if we will see snow, where we could see snow, and also if there will be any sort of big weather events. This is what we're looking at as we go into Thursday into Friday of this week. Notice how high pressure is going to be building, really not any sort of big activity through the rest of the work week. By the weekend, we'll have a shot of maybe some light to moderate snow moving across the Great Lakes and then also back over in the Rocky Mountains. This could keep things a little interesting, especially back over on the West Coast. Much needed moisture will be there back over along the West Coast as well in California, which should help to prevent any more wildfires from forming into the weekend, which is good news. That little trough that's going to develop will actually be a good thing. By the time we go into early next week, that is when we may have a small disturbance form back over in the deep south and back into the Ohio Valley. At this time, it is too early to tell whether this will be producing any sort of significant snow or even any severe weather, but it will be something to keep a close eye on in case it does bubble up into something like what we just saw, which I don't think we're going to see anything like we just saw for probably decades or even centuries to come. With that said, I mean, there's definitely a possibility of some snow further down to the south into the Ohio Valley. By the middle and end of next week, that is when things will get a little bit more interesting, I think. I think the weather pattern will get more active before January ends. Exactly where we see snow and exactly if we see any severe weather is all up in the air since it's about a week out from now. But we do have at least a chance here in the Midwest for maybe a little bit more snowfall, perhaps even the Northeast, and then some showers, thunderstorms, and maybe even another winter weather event forming down in the deep south and the southern plains. Again, this all is up in the air since it's pretty far out. The GFS model does show a bigger winter storm forming by the beginning of February, but keep in mind, this is over a week out. This is actually going to be over 10 days out, so take it with a grain of salt. Things will change between now and then. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll keep you posted with the latest on anything that develops like this between now and the end of winter. And I just want to throw this out there. There's obviously a lot of model discrepancy, especially 7 days out. This is the Canadian ensembles, which were very, very correct on this past winter storm. They were almost spot on with this winter storm in terms of its intensity. This is what it shows by the weekend into early next week. It does show maybe a little bit of snow or freezing rain back over in the southeast, but predominantly just some showers and thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. And then beyond that, by the middle and end of next week, it does show a chance of snow back over in the Midwest and back into the Northeast with a basically Alberta clipper that would be coming out of Canada. And then eventually by next weekend, things obviously become a lot more uncertain, but it does show more snow back over in the Ohio Valley and Northeast. But again, it's too early to tell what's exactly going to happen. We'll keep you posted with the latest with any sort of big winter storms that are on the horizon, or even if there's some small snow events. It's very possible that we'll have more videos here over the next few days. Now, another big thing that'll be impacting the United States is the temperatures. We're going to continue to see more shots of cold air over the next few days. Another shot of cold air is actually coming in tomorrow across the Great Plains and back into the Midwest. This will cool many areas down, especially back over in the Central Plains. And then eventually, as we go into Friday into Saturday, that cold air moves towards the East Coast. And look at that. We got another little shot of cold air that'll be basically hugging the Rocky Mountains on Saturday and Sunday. This is by no means as intense as the cold air that we've been seeing over the last few days, but it is definitely something to still keep in mind. And then by the early to middle portion of next week, look at this. We have some oranges and reds popping up again. You know what that means? Above average temperatures are going to return back to the country, while below average temperatures will build back over in the Rocky Mountains and also back into the desert Southwest. And then eventually by the middle and end of next week, it looks like this weather pattern will stay pretty much the same. Again, the GFS model is hinting that we could have another sharp area of cold air that enters out of Canada and moves through the Midwest and the Northeast. And it is worth noting that this particular Arctic blast that could occur during the middle and end of next week is a lot smaller than the one we just dealt with. So overall, there's a lot more uncertainty here, whether how large or small it's going to be and if it'll end up bringing snow. GFS model currently is indicating that there will be both snow and as well as much colder weather. So the temperatures out there this morning, notice many areas in the Northeast are sub-zero, and also even down in the deep south, many areas are down into the teens. But it's going to change again as we go into this weekend. We will start to warm back up gradually across many areas, but again, there will be some shots of cold air. They'll be very occasional, especially especially back over in the Midwest and the Northern Plains. But again, most areas will be warming up, especially back over along the Gulf Coast. And even by the end of next week, things look to be relatively nice for most of the country. We could even have some areas up into Nebraska into the mid to upper 50s by the end of next week. That would be crazy. And just to put this into perspective, areas like Omaha, Nebraska have barely seen any snow this winter, maybe 1 to 2 inches, if that. Areas like Louisiana and even Milton, Florida have seen over 8 times that amount of snow, which is just insane to think about. I mean, this winter has already been crazy. 2025 is going to be a crazy year. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and buckle up. I think it'll be a very interesting severe weather season as well as we kick into March, April, and May. But before that happens, more winter storms are still on the horizon. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like the button down below and subscribe if you've not already.